and Ms Swarbrick.
I'll call Greg O'Connor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to start by congratulating the member and the chair for attempting to do something about it. We all, as electorate MPs, we are faced every day with people who come into our office, and we want to do something about it. We like to send them away with a solution. But solutions, as we learn, a quick fix, just add water and stir type solutions are not generally those that are available to us, because if they were that easy, then they wouldn't have ended up in our office often. So, Madam Speaker, coming to Section 4 of Part 4 of this bill, the sentencing option, so often in history of law enforcement, and particularly those who make the laws, we look for that easy fix, something that is going to look good, something we're going to feel good about, and something that we can probably reassure those who come to us with the problems with. However, one advantage of standing here with a little grey hair and having seen a little bit in my 40 years in police was that I was a police officer in the 1970s when we had a major heroin problem in this country. We had heroin death, and the sign or the symptoms of a heroin problem are generally overdose deaths. That's how you really know you've got a problem. There will be crime, there'll be other associated, but really, ultimately, it's those that die because of overdose. And in the 1970s, when I was a young police officer in this very town, we had major problems with heroin overdose. And that was happening around the country. And I wasn't really aware of the political environment at that time, but the debate, there was something of the same outcry, and the sentence for heroin dealing went to life imprisonment, and it still is on the books now as life imprisonment, and it made no difference at all. And as a result of that, the deaths continued. In fact, in Wellington, we had a bigger problem because in Auckland there was a homicide that resulted in a lot of pressure going on heroin dealers, not around the sentencing, around trying to solve the homicide. So Wellington became full of heroin addicts and, of course, dealers, and we ended up with a raft of deaths similar to where we are today. And that life sentence made no difference whatsoever. What actually did make a difference was when the Mr Asia syndicate collapsed, because they'd become so effective at bringing heroin into New Zealand, so good at what they did, they had squeezed out all the opposition. So when they fell apart in the late 70s, early 80s, all of a sudden there was no heroin in New Zealand. New Zealand heroin addicts jumped on a plane and went to Australia. That was where we got a really bad name over there. So, Madam Chair, while I may sound that I'm drifting a little from Part 4, this is all about the sentencing and the in effect of the sentencing. I'm anticipating a rebuke, perhaps, Madam Chair, but I'm pleased to see that that's not coming my way. But no, back to the subject. In that case, I was probably, it's fair to say, a much younger man in those days and didn't quite have the broad outline. And it's when you get to the stage where you can sit and reflect on those things you've learned that I know that, again, going back to this bill and what it is attempting to fix, it won't actually fix anything. You know, those, and we're well aware, and I was sat on the select committee, we're well aware of the terrible stories out there. I've had family members who have been involved in this. Interesting, the history of the sentencing, when the problem was at its worst in about 2011, 2012, that first piece of legislation went through did actually fix the problems in the short term. Because the suppliers, of course, were legitimate suppliers, and when they were taken out of the market, there was actually no one who filled the gap at that time. There's a history of how we've got to where we are for another time, perhaps not to really come within Part 4 of this Act or this bill, Madam Chair. But can I just encourage the member that while he will be doing this for the right reason, and certainly he will have had people coming to his office, this won't fix anything. And the worst thing about it is that we will end up thinking, well, we've done that, fixed that, let's go on to the next problem. And unfortunately, it will not solve anything. It will stop us from really addressing the issue. Those issues that my colleagues have talked about, the fact that why people end up using these substances in the first place. It is something that really generally affects the lowest socio-economic part of New Zealand, those who are probably the rest of their lives are not in great shape. So using this substances is just another part of that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Priyanka Radakrishnan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too rise to make a short-ish contribution.